So does everyone understand the difference between exponential growth and linear growth? Okay, awesome. Sure. So a lot of people think that growth happens in a linear scale, in a linear path. So when you're in school and when you're in math class and being brought up in university, most things look like this, right? They're like, oh, so over time things are going to grow incrementally. If you're here and today is day one and your business makes $10,000 this month, in month two, if you're growing linearly, you would make 20,000, and then 30,000, and then 40,000. But when you actually look at growth within companies, within stocks, within people, you'll never see that. That's very rare that you see linear growth. But what typically happens is you see exponential growth, where over time, the buildup is hardest when you begin, and then all of a sudden, it starts to kick up. And so that's because, as we said, more momentum, the more subscribers, the more people who are going to start to subscribe, and the channel gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Same with advertising. Once you start to get one client profitably, you get another one, and then you get 3, and then you get 7, and then all of a sudden you've got more clients than you can even handle. So that's the difference between linear growth and exponential growth. And what causes these? Does anyone know what causes exponential versus linear growth? If I told you were looking at the answer, natural laws. Yes, natural laws. So there's 2 natural laws in particular, 80-20 and cause and effect. So cause and effect is really the beginning of everything. And 80-20, who knows what that is? The Pareto principle? Okay. So basically 20% of your effort produces 80% of the result. That's in most things. Now, in life, what do we hear all the time? Well, because everyone's paradigm is stuck on this linear growth model, you hear people who, let's say they get a PhD, but PhDs today, like doctors, things like that, they're typically making $150,000, $250,000 a year. Entrepreneurs like Carl Icahn have made billions of dollars in one day. They're not even on the scale as far as how much money you can make. So that education path is not accurate, right? And that's why Carl Icahn's income, Warren Buffett's, theirs looks like this, whereas PhDs are down here at the bottom sort of yelling and screaming, I don't understand this. I did all this education. I spent all this time. Why am I not rewarded the way I thought I was going to be, right? And that's where they don't understand how 80-20 works. Okay, so 80-20 is a natural law. It exists pretty much everywhere. 80% of the traffic drives on 20% of the roads, right? 80% of the world is like water, 20% is earth, and those numbers are off. 80% of the wealth is held by 20% of the people, okay? And trying to fight these natural laws is trying to fight something that is intangible. It's natural. It's a part of the way the world is created, in a sense. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah, okay. And so what causes natural law, though, is simple cause and effect. So whatever the cause is circles into effect, and then effect goes back into cause, and cause goes back into effect. So for instance, what you think is what you think about. If you tell yourself not to think about a pink elephant, all of a sudden you're thinking about a pink elephant. And then you say, don't think about a pink elephant, and then you think about a pink elephant more. And you just keep thinking about this pink elephant. It's like people try to figure out what's causing my thoughts to come up, and it's just thought. Thought is causing your thoughts. So there's no way to actually control that, but to change it, you can replace it, you can supplement it. So as far as like the highs and lows of your life and this wave that you're on, learning how to use 80-20, learning how to use cause and effect, basically tells us that you always can earn more. You can always be more productive. Okay. And that's the exciting thing about understanding this natural law, is you have 24 hours a day, so does everyone else. Everyone else has the same amount of time. But some people are focusing right here, while most people are focusing on these. not the 80%, right? And so you need to figure out what this 20% is. And then once you put your attention on that and start working on it, you're going to start to produce more, right? And so does anybody have an experience they want to share of like when this happened for them or when they figured this out? Okay. I would say a good example of this would be when you selected a niche.
Yeah.
I would say that'd be it.
And also the next one is getting a contractor to do a ton of the work.
So you got freedom from time perspective. Yep. So that's
basically instead of me doing the 80 part, he's doing the 80. Yeah. I think the niche was the biggest one. It's just being like, all right, this is what I'm gonna do.
Yep. And that goes into Jeff.
Well, I was gonna say, one of them for me that happened last year is I was so focused on reaching out to a bunch of people. And then one of the first bigger breaks I had was a friend of mine, rather than trying to go after everybody else. If I would have just focused maybe first on friends and family, but the friend ends up working for a nonprofit and she wasn't spending her money, she was spending the organization's money. And so it was the largest project that I'd done to date. And if I would have just focused, that smaller group rather than trying to go after everybody else, I might have those results a little sooner.
Yeah. So that goes into the 20% and the 80%. Trying to convince people who don't know who you are, that's the 80%. When you're starting your business, you should focus on the 20%, which is people who are warm, they already know who you are, you're just getting started, it's going to be a lot easier, right? That's kind of a very quick, easy win. I remember the first time I heard that, I did it as well, and that's where I got the jewelry client, right? That first website client I got. It's a friend. So that's how little pieces of knowledge, depending on where you are going to allow you to focus on that 20% that's going to produce everything for you. And so when you're thinking about this and you're looking at it from your business perspective, it's important to know the creator's operating system and proof of concept. It's probably the most important lesson we'll cover on the business fundamentals side, because it's the most important lesson I think I've learned in business. So as far as a proof of concept goes, does everyone know what I mean when I say proof of concept? Okay. So does everyone know what the creator's operating system looks like? From a business perspective. So within your business, it's not important to have to, the goal is to not be a generalist, which means not to have a bunch of random things that all connect together, triangles, squares, and things, and then you're just doing a whole bunch of them in all different directions all at the time. The goal is to find a couple small variables that you know work to produce a certain result, and then do that over and over and over again. So the first way you learn this is in sales, typically. Because you figure out one thing that works to get someone to say yes. Then you try to say that again. And you try to say it again. But what happens is a lot of people, what they're doing is they're selling squares, triangles, all different types of businesses, all different types of people, wedding over here, this over here, and the results are just, they're all over the place. There's no consistency to the number of people who are saying yes. And so that's where you realize the proof of concept, you want to have one answer to each area of the proof of concept. So you want to have one marketing, and forgive my terrible handwriting, sales, operations, and finances. So you want to have one thing for each. So that what does that actually mean? Well, how do I generate enough volume of sales from one channel to fill my calendar with sales appointments? That's the goal there. And when you're starting out, you've only got two things you can do to make that happen. You can invest your time, or you can invest your money to generate that volume. Right? So Who here has one marketing channel that's producing appointments for them? Does anybody have that in place? But you have a system in place that generates you appointments at a profit. So that's good. So we've got 2 people with that. Then, once the question is, well, where can I get it? And it's how much can I get from that channel? And how do I produce as much as possible before moving on to the next one? Because 80-20 tells us if you start to put your focus into another area, right, you're going to be lessening the impact from the first area. You can master one thing because you can go 80-20 squared, 80-20 to the third, and get more out of this one channel than you would be able to by spreading out into a vast amount of others. And so, marketing. Who here has a sales process that converts at 20% or higher consistently? 2 people, okay. And operations, who has a proof of concept from the point of result? I would say, yeah, a few people do in that case. I would even say you do, because you have a proof of concept. It's just the wrong one, right? And then finances, who do you know how much profit you're going to make on each deal consistently? Yeah. So until you have one thing in each of these areas, everything is going to be sporadic. So when we talk about your business, I want you to realize right now, a lot of people will say this isn't possible, right? And it's never going to be perfect, but it's going to be very close. This is where your focus should be. The focus is always on getting one thing in each of these first. Until you have one thing that works in each of these 4 spots, you don't want to move on to a new channel. You don't want to move on to a new offering. You don't want to move on to a new niche because you haven't mastered this one yet. You know there's still room for exponential growth by just getting one thing right here. And that's what proof of concept is all about. So that was probably the most important lesson I learned, because as soon as you go to sell one thing properly once and it works, you want to duplicate that process. You want to duplicate exactly what you did there. So understanding this and the creator's operating system being just marketing, sales, operations, and finance, if we were to look at the actual company structure, most everyone here right now is planning on being a solopreneur for the next 3 months, right? Just being you, okay? So I'm not going to get into too much detail on how this branches out, but just to show you kind of what it looks like when you do go to branch out. I'll start just at the top, is you have yourself as sort of the general manager. And then underneath of this, you've got 4 cogs, and each of those cogs is one of these. So operations, sales, marketing, or finances. And to speed up the process of growing your business, the goal, your very first goal when you start your business, is to hire team, like make this all profitable, figure out the ones for each, and then put someone in one of these seats. So you want a marketing team lead, you want a sales team lead, an operations team lead, and a finance team lead. From there, they hire the team underneath of you. Okay? So that makes life really easy. So you're not managing everybody in your company. You don't even have to talk to people in your company. The next salesperson who's hired, I'm not even going to meet them before they're hired, probably. And that's what you want, because you need to get your time back to focus on the other things in the business.